Welcome to the GSB Women in Entrepreneurship panel. I'd like to make it very interactive today, so we'll definitely reserve lots of time for Q&A. I'll introduce the speakers, and then I'll give them a series of questions, probably the same set of questions, and we'll have them go through it, and then we'll open it up for questions. And I thought I might offer a few of my own insights from the VC perspective and from the past chairwoman, former women entrepreneurs perspective. So let me start at the end. Gina Bianchini, hope I got that right, is a GSB 2000. She founded Harmonic Communications, a provider of hosted marketing intelligence software to companies and their advertising agencies, in March of 2000 while in her second year of business school. They are backed by Sequoia Capital and Dentsu, one of the world's largest advertising agencies, and she currently serves as Harmonic's Chief Marketing Officer. Prior to founding Harmonic, Gina worked at McKinsey & Company, CKS Group, and Goldman Sachs. Hope I got that all right. And then we have Melissa Parsons, who is a GSB 78 and also has an engineering degree from Stanford. She's the founder of Reach Fitness Club, which offers Pilates, aerobics, and dance lessons. They also do management contracts for corporations such as Oracle. She founded the nonprofit organization Meeting for Good, a singles helping the community. And she's worked as a management consultant at BCG and Bain, and worked at Bechtel as an engineer. Then we have Varsha Rao, who isn't a Stanford MBA, but we'll welcome her. She's a Harvard MBA. Was the co-founder of Eve.com, which was launched in June 1999 as the first website to offer beauty products on the web. Eve.com was sold in May 2000. She's currently president of category management at Keen, the leading person-to-person marketplace for live advice. And before founding Eve.com, Varsha worked at McKinsey & Company and as a financial analyst at Wasserstein Perella. Did I get that right? Yes. And then we have Betty Perlin, who is GSB class of 83, founder of PersonalShopping.com, a personalized shopping service on the web. And previously, she co-founded a women's apparel company in New York called Eleanor P. Brenner and worked at senior levels in several startups. In addition, she was general manager of Room Books, which developed children's software, and she's currently working on several consulting projects. So hopefully I got all your intros right. So I thought I'd just say a few words, and then I'll launch into questions for the panel. I tried to think about what are the elements of success in an entrepreneurial venture. And I want the panelists to sort of address the personal side of it. So I just kind of compiled a list of what we look for as a venture fund today. And it's changed a little bit over time. I started in venture in '93, coming out of the recession. Went through the bubble, and now we're sort of back to maybe the '98 timeframe in terms of pace and size of deals and types of businesses we're funding. I think number one for us is the experience, vision, and energy of the team. But it isn't just, that the original vision is going to be the one that's, executed on. It's the flexibility, the perseverance. It's a team that's, going to make it happen no matter what obstacles are thrown their way. And often you see groups of entrepreneurs that have worked together before, and so they've had a bonding experience, whether they've spun out of a big company, or this is their second startup together, or they went to business school together. Sometimes that helps the team bond. It's also the strong triumvirate between CEO, board, and management team. So, three strong components, not, super amazing CEO who's very controlling and does everything and has a weak team underneath him or her, but someone who really hires strong people and looks for a board that they're going to view as a set of individuals to collaborate and communicate with, not just sort of manage up, get the money. So when you see that kind of functional triumvirate, I think it gives the company a lot better shot. Potentially large and rapidly growing markets. This is a hard one because I remember RHK had predicted certain optical component markets would be 20 billion, or actually the sum of it was going to be 20 billion, and some were as large as 3 to 5 billion. This is back in '99. And some of those same market segments are projected to be 3 million this year. So clearly, no one has, the kind of, the knowledge of market timing and, economic cycles. It makes it tough, but you ought to at least believe that this is going to be a large emerging market. We like to fund something that could grow to $1 billion market over a couple of years. and that probably means there's entrenched competitors already attacking it with some kind of solution. So next point would be strong and extensible competitive advantage. Ideally you'd see some kind of invention, but sometimes it's more of an architectural advantage or bringing together, different forms of IP. We often say, well, that's an execution play, but there ought to be something that gives the company a competitive advantage for at least some number of months. A clear and compelling business model, so the correct form of the solution, service, product, there's no one answer. Appropriate channels, pricing that makes sense, that's probably the area we work the most with when we incubate a company, have they come up with the right business model. Reasonable capital requirements, we might have funded something during the bubble that took $2, $3, even $1 billion to get to break even, which I can't believe we actually did that, but money was sort of infinite then. I would say today, anything that takes over $50 million is going to get pretty hard scrutiny, and we probably wouldn't fund it. And then I think I already talked about luck, timing, and connections. I used to think when I was sitting in your position that if I was going to be an entrepreneur, I'd have to have the brilliant idea, and I didn't think I would. I actually think it's more about where you are in time and where you are, relative to an opportunity. So, for example, you might be at a big company, but you're exposed to a problem, you're exposed to other individuals, and you find yourself in a position to solve that problem. And I've even seen entrepreneurs come in our door with absolutely no idea, great collection of folks. They go out and interview 20 customers in an area where they have domain knowledge, and they come up with a solution. So it's purely a choice to be an entrepreneur, not, the idea that drove it. So let me come back to the panel now, and maybe we'll just go down the line. So we'll start on this end. If you could each tell us your entrepreneurial story. Did you plan to be an entrepreneur? Was there a particular person or event that inspired you?
Well, I was recruited to be an entrepreneur in my first venture. A fashion designer in New York was looking for a partner to start a women's apparel company, and through mutual friends, we got hooked up. I really didn't see myself as an entrepreneur. That was my first job out of business school. But it actually was a great way to become an entrepreneur. It was great in this situation having a partner. This was somebody that actually had industry experience and knowledge. And together we worked very hard and made a successful venture. And it was a situation where I didn't have the idea. It was somebody else's idea and somebody else's vision. Years later, when I started PersonalShopping.com, that was a situation where I had a vision. I had a vision of what the potential of the internet could be with respect to e-commerce. And I actually had this vision very early on, before there was e-commerce. I got the URL for the company years before there was any e-commerce that existed, and I sat on it. And I started to work on the concept when things were just beginning to roll. So for me, it was great to get into entrepreneurship the way I did, kind of not something I set out to do, but something I fell into. Learned a lot from, worked very hard for 6 years, had a successful venture, and then I could go off on my own. When I did have an idea, I did have a passion for something.
Great question.
I definitely never thought I was going to be an entrepreneur. I was at McKinsey. I went to HBS, and then I went to work at McKinsey I was there for about 3 years, and I actually thought I was going to just stay at McKinsey, become a partner, and live happily ever after. But after about 3 years, I had been traveling straight for 3 years. I had never had a week in town in New York where I was living, and I really got tired of it. And so I started to think about what else I would want to do. And it was about summer of '98, actually, when all this happened. And a good friend of mine who was actually here at Stanford at the time, and who actually came to Stanford, we had been roommates right out of undergrad when we were both analysts in different investment banks. And we were still friends. And she had come to Stanford specifically with the idea of starting a business and starting a company. And so she approached me to start a company. with her, but it was in kind of the enterprise software space. And I had been doing actually a lot of work at McKinsey in e-commerce. We had been interviewing a lot of different consumer companies like Barnes & Noble, Clinique, Avon, all types of companies like that. And I just thought that was my most exciting work that I was doing at McKinsey, the stuff I was doing on the side. So I thought that, there's something wrong here. So I told my friend that I would love to start a business with her, but I wanted to do something that I was really interested in because, frankly, if it didn't work out, at least I wanted to have a great experience, something I was really passionate about. And I just couldn't see myself doing enterprise software, in the long term if it didn't work out as a startup. So we started Eve.com together and kind of went through the whole cycle. We were able to raise funding really pretty quickly, given probably the timing that it was. And I moved out here to California. We started the business together. And it was a great experience for me because, one, my partner and I, her name is Miriam Nafisi. She was GSB, I think, 98. We were great, I think a great team together. We had an implicit level of trust because we had lived together before. We had, I think, very similar values, and I think that's really, really important when you're starting a company, if you're going to have a partner. The other thing I would say is I think it's really important to have a partner. And it was a great way for me to get involved in an entrepreneurial environment. This was really something I was passionate about, so I felt like I could really put everything behind it. And then when we sold the company in May of 2000, we were at the time about 150 people. We had gone through the whole cycle of launching a website. We were having a run rate of about $10 million in revenue, and so I got kind of the full experience of what it was like to start something, take it from the two of us to a real, what I would think was a relatively large organization. And then after that, I've gone back and I'm actually no longer at Keen. I worked at another internet company for about a year after I finished up with Eve. And it was actually more as an employee. I was VP of category management, as Jill said. And then, but I actually have left there, and I've started a smaller company called Zoel, which is a luxury jewelry company. And it's really interesting because my idea for this company actually also came out of my experience at Eve, where we did a lot of research to expand into new markets. So I would say that you can actually get a lot of your ideas from your environments that you work in, which is kind of similar to what both of you were saying. And it's really interesting to have gone back for me into the corporate environment after having done a startup. And I think I can now really more objectively say what are the benefits and advantages as well as disadvantages to both the entrepreneurial side as well as the corporate side.
Great. Melissa?
Okay. I think that my story is sort of similar in some ways and a little different in others, in that my path was really both personal need and fulfillment. I started off, believe it or not, I'm the ancient one here. When I was at Stanford, I was the only woman engineer. And went to Bechtel, was the first woman hired as a full engineer. They had 30,000 engineers, so it's a little bit of an anomaly. Went to the Boston Consulting Group. There was one other woman who was an economist, and then was one of the group that broke off to form Bain & Company. I think that women were not quite as well accepted then as they are now, and entrepreneurship, there really was a glass ceiling that was pretty strong. At the time I started Reach, it was for a personal need, and that was, I was in poor health and was looking for a place to get in shape to start my high-tech big business. And then I had my little boy, and found that was more important than anything that had come across my desk in a long time, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. And wanted to find something that would give me the balance in life. And at the same time, my husband got very ill and actually passed away, and I found that, I am the only breadwinner and the only parent, and I did not have partners, the only one responsible for this small business. And it has been a great vehicle for me to give me the balance in life, the financial independence. I can now retire. I didn't make it till I was 54. I'm now 55, but the idea of you can do it when you're 40, when you're in business school, just seems so doable. But I've now achieved that. I think that a small business and the fact that it is something as low-tech as a health club just tells you that you don't have to have the perfect idea. You just have to use the skills. I used a lot of the consulting skills in knowing how to position the business. You use the skills you pick up along the way, and you're just stubborn enough that you don't understand that you can't do it. It just doesn't cross your mind. So that's sort of my story.
Tina?
Sure. I have a quick question first. Has anybody in the room started a business? Or planning on starting a business? Anybody? Sort of following school kind of thing? Okay. Just checking to see
Percentage is down now.
Yeah, it used to probably be a little bit higher in 2000 when I was in business school, which I think we're the class that you guys have gotten yelled at about it from the job recruiting perspective. Yeah, heard that. That's nice. Sorry about that. My experience as an entrepreneur, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do out of business school. And in my second year of business school, my former boss from the company that I worked at before school came to me and said, marketing is only getting more complex. The number of media channels and customer segments and creative messages that a marketer has to manage on a daily basis has just gotten ridiculous. Let's go start a company. And so in my second year of business school, I would spend basically the morning going to class and the afternoon going up to Sand Hill Road and a venture capital firm up there that essentially incubated me and the company that I founded. So it just seemed at that moment, why not? And I think kind of coming out of business school, it was I had nothing to lose, and I still feel that way 3 years later. Now, that being said, I think you have to be absolutely insane at times to continue to move forward with a company and an idea when a lot of people, especially rational people, tell you, no, you can't do it, or it's a scary time or whatever. And yet, I am definitely here to tell you that passion and emotional commitment to an idea and a company combined with utterly rational decision-making when and where you can, is a recipe for success in 2003 as it was in 1998 and was in 1993. And I'm also really excited because I love Eve.com. That was like such a great site. Are you guys, now, is Eve still in?
No, unfortunately, the new
So they
owners
shut
that
down?
bought us, they shut us down about 6 months
But
later.
you're also like a total celebrity. You're in all the fashion magazines with the line, your new line. I've seen it like 3 or 4 times. It's great. I'm all like starstruck in here, So, anyways, that's my story.
You guys have had a theme here of once you go entrepreneurial, you probably don't go back, and it also confirms my belief that it's as much genetic, I would say, as environmental, if not more so. It almost feels like it's a set of personality characteristics. You guys have talked about a lot of them: tenacity, maybe desire for control or flexibility. So aside from that kind of right place, right time, it could almost be what you elect to do based on who you are. I'd be curious, though, what you guys think it takes to be successful. I mean, a lot of folks, especially in the class of 2000 or before, raise their hand and said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I mean, my hairdresser was, angel funding, GSB deals. I mean, it was so insane.
Yeah.
We all recall. Seriously. And, while he's cutting my hair, he'd ask me, tell me more about DSL. And
My landlord started a company called Rent.com, and is like, was the aggregator of rental properties in Palo Alto and beyond. So, I mean, it was just crazy.
I think everybody raised their hand because it felt like, I'll be left behind, or, it looks like instant wealth creation, etc. But now that the sands have settled, I think it's back to those who feel a calling, are willing to take risks, are probably willing to make some sacrifices. But I would love to hear, you guys have gone through pre-bubble, bubble, and beyond. What were the key factors in your success?
Well, the first thing I think is important is to have a passion for what you're doing. I think that's very important for you and for the entire company. I think the company needs a good idea and good execution of that idea, which means you need to have a good team. And I found at the very early stages of getting something off the ground that you need to do a lot of networking and have good connections. That's very helpful. That helped me tremendously when I was working on personalshopping.com. Just started talking to people who led me to other people and to some entrepreneurial coaches who led me to VCs and lawyers and
Was the GSB
angels.
network a big part of that? Or?
Yes, actually. So, for me,
Feels that way to me.
yeah, yeah,
But that's one of the biggest assets you all walk out of here with.
and that lasts a lifetime.
How about you, Varsha?
I would say the biggest thing is perseverance. I mean, I can't even tell you. It's like, one day you think you're going to be a gazillionaire and that you're going to build this huge, big business, and then the next day you think you're going out of business. And it's like that dramatic. And so I think that perseverance is so, so important. And kind of being able to have the personality to deal with sort of those ups and downs. And I think in order to do that, that's really why. I mean, people say passion, but I think it's the passion that gets you through sort of those highs and lows, because it's really an incredible roller coaster. And it's incredibly satisfying when you can achieve the smallest results. But it's also incredibly heartbreaking when, a client or an account you've worked hard for decides for some reason kind of beyond your control that they're not going to work with you anymore. And I think what I've definitely seen, sort of starting another venture is that it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It really isn't, in the sort of the flurry of the bubble era, it felt like it was just like this because everything was moving so fast. But in reality, it's kind of like a little bit zigzaggy. So I think perseverance is really, really important. And I think in order to also help you with those ups and downs, that's really why it's great to have a partner or a great team around you who is equally passionate about what you're doing, because sometimes you need to be able to rely on other people, because you won't always have that 125% belief that you can make this thing happen.
I equate it to the that in high school there was always that couple that they loved each other one moment and then they hated each other and fought the next moment, and it could be that kind of emotional swing throughout the day, and you just looked at them and you're like, how could you possibly stay in this relationship if it's going up and down? I think the same thing is starting a company, because the highs and lows that you can feel on a daily basis at times
Are more amplified.
are just absolutely amplified, and yet it's rewarding too, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well,
The only other thing I would say is I do think that network is important, but I think basically not being shy is really, really important. For a lot of the things that we were doing, HBS or Stanford or McKinsey networks just didn't matter, because we were talking to beauty companies, and most of the beauty companies aren't run by such sophisticated management. That's the honest God.
No commentary there.
It's the truth. But it meant we had to do a lot of cold calling. We had to really believe in what we were doing, and we had to be willing to take no for an answer. And that's really just, I call it shyness, but some people are not willing to pick up the phone and talk to someone they don't know, regardless of. But if you really believe in what you're doing, I think that gives you sort of the added confidence to just, make those kind of cold calls.
Mm-hmm.
Your comment about risk, I think that's a very interesting thing, and you're willing to take on risk. I have a friend who's been extremely successful in the merchandising business, and he was trying to convince me that I should be selling more clothing through the fitness centers. And I had this discussion. I said, oh man, that just looks risky to me, all that merchandise there. And he said, risk, that's an opportunity. I mean, he saw, what I saw as very risky, he saw as an opportunity. And I said, you're the one who had this huge risk. I said, you have 4 kids, and you continually, signed over the mortgage on your house over and over again every time you opened a new store. And he said, risk? I never saw any risk. And he said, you were the one that was risky. And I said, I never saw any risk. And to each of us in our own fields, we never saw risk. And I think that if you're on the right track, you may not know how to get there. But if you know where you're going, my father used to say, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Once you know where you're going, you'll get there. And the risk, I just didn't see the risk. He didn't see the risk in his field. And I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, and they feel the same way. If they believe in the idea, they'll get there. And this idea of you have to be a risk taker, I certainly don't consider myself a risk taker.
What I would say to that, though, is getting comfortable with failure or potential failure. And, I think on some level, just even sitting in this room, having gotten into Stanford Business School, you guys are a successful group of people. It's like, I'm sure you've had, like all of us, we've had failure, but, I know going in, graduating from business school, I had gotten the jobs I wanted to get, and I had, gone to, I got into business school and I was all excited. And, basically the things that I had done professionally, I had done in part because, I was going to it was considered successful. Starting a company, you get hung up on. They're like, who are you? It's not one of the things that it's like when you tell your friends, and especially in 2000, it very much was, everybody's going to be an entrepreneur. And when you talk to people that went to business school like in the late 80s, it was like everyone's going into real estate investment. It's like there's always sort of the cool job to get out of business school that everybody's sort of vying for. VC was, it for a while, especially like when I was in school.